All right, well, let's get started. We've got a quorum. So we should move, got a number of things to get done tonight. So I'll call the meeting to order. Our first order of business is public comment and make sure. Not look like we have any guests. So we will continue. We can also maintain the opportunity if people do want to speak, as we have done in the past, we will do that as well. On to the approval, review and approval of minutes from March 12th. I'll take a motion for their approval.
I'll move.
So move. There's a second.
No, but didn't Chris want to make an amendment?
Yeah, he had some changes I had
Yeah,
printed out.
you want to read what the amendment is?
Let's see. He wanted to say that consistent with Bruce's observations of my comments toward the end of our last meeting, I will suggest an amendment to those minutes after Doug's comment, that an additional comment be added. Mr. Rickson raised the point that in our discussion about zoning and design standards, we had focused on the known uses that were listed in the zoning regulations and wondered whether we should also brainstorm other uses not listed. His example was an outdoor arena that might be able to house minor league soccer matches, plus other events. In addition, I would add Mr. Dunn's comments as number 7, public follow-up comments, and make adjournment number 8.
Let me take those issues separately. One is does anybody have any concern with Chris adding his comment after Doug's under comments from ad hoc committee members? It is consistent with what was said. All right, and then unfortunately, because it's good to have these minutes follow the agenda, we don't have a spot at the end for comments by the public. So what I would simply do is suggest we leave it the way it is. Maybe what we should do is, well, you do say at the beginning that others present is JT Dunn, so he's clearly not a committee member. So why don't we, my recommendation is that we take the first comment, shelve the second comment, and revise the minutes to that effect.
Wait, you're saying that we just wouldn't reflect that Mr. Dunn made comments?
No, we already reflect that in the minutes.
Oh,
What
okay.
we're saying was make it as a separate item in the minutes.
Oh, okay.
And I'm saying it wouldn't, at that point, it would not be tracking the agenda.
Right. Got it.
Okay. So with that amendment, I will ask for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent.
Who seconded? I'm sorry, I was.
Emily seconded. Okay. Moving on. Subgroup updates. Doug, you're traveling solo right now.
Are you muted on your end or is it me?
Can you not hear us?
I can hear you.
Somehow you're muted. Emily can hear us remotely. We can sing happy birthday till you can hear us if you want. Are you? Let's hear you say something, Doug. Can you talk?
No, we can't. I can't hear.
Anything changed for you? You be able to fix it?
Yeah, I can hear that now. It looks like Bruce, your microphone is muted, but I guess that's because you're using the room microphones.
That's correct.
Okay,
Right.
well, I can hear you now.
Okay, we can hear you and you can hear us. So we're at the soils and testing and wetlands subgroup, and I said, you're on your own.
Okay, thank you. So we reached out to Jacobson to get an update on where the revised scope document is, and they indicated that they would have it by the end of next week. So we're eagerly awaiting that, and once we get that, you can share it with Carl, and hopefully we'll put that in motion.
Okay,
And that's my update.
all right, sounds good, thank you. Business and property owner outreach, what I'll do is throw under this item tonight, the issue about our public meeting that we had talked about at the last time. I do apologize for not having checked my own calendar when I was scheduling scheduling with you folks. So does changing that meeting to the 23rd, does that cause a problem for anybody?
April 23rd.
It would be our regular meeting time, April 23rd.
Nope, fine with me.
Would be fine with me.
With any luck, I'll be able to see, so that would be good.
And that gives more time for people for us to get people to come, hopefully.
Right, to get things out. So, I drafted a letter that would be going out, in a snail mail fashion. Jennifer, you've got that.
Yeah.
And we would basically use the body of that to also be an email that we could, send to anybody, whose emails we have. And then, Jennifer and I talked last week about putting together just a simple flyer to be able to have us hand out as we, as the weather turns nice, it'll be just like going out on campaign trail again for me to go out and knock on doors and turn over the flyers, so that I thought probably starting next week, have an opportunity to be able to do that once we get the flyers in hand. So what more do you need from me at this point, Jennifer, relative to getting the materials ready?
If you guys have updated contact information, I'll take that.
Okay,
We have more emails now or whatever. That would be helpful.
all right, I will send you any listings that I have. Make sure, Tracy, you get whatever I sent to Jennifer, so that we have that.
Okay.
And then from an agenda standpoint, I thought we would take a few minutes, but not many, to kind of talk about how we got, how we got where we are today, what the goals of the committee work are at this point, how we've broken into these different groups, what the responsibilities of the groups are, and maybe time frame associated with that. Bring up the idea, we'll be talking more about it tonight, around the zoning amendment, and then just open it for Q&A. But I'm happy to hear anybody else's suggestions for other our specifics within any of those agenda items. Anybody? Does that kind of cover it doesn't have to be a long meeting, but I do think those are the, sorry, the substance of what we're working on, so I figure we just share it with whoever shows up.
Can you go through it one more time for me? So we do this.
So do quick background as quick as possible. Talk about what the goals of this group are. Then talk about the soils work that Doug and Chris are doing, the streetscape development that we're talking about. Then go into kind of a brief, recognition that we are talking about zoning regs. Tonight I want to bring up a couple of examples of things that are already in place in town that we might want to use as models. Again, just put it out there and then have question and answer.
I would love to see us, for each subcommittee, maybe provide or focus on. I mean, I think generalized Q&A is fine, but I would rather if we focused on where we would like input from the people there.
What are we looking for from you?
Yeah, so here's what we're doing, here's what we want to hear from you about right now.
Mhm.
Because I think in the future, there may be another round of things to reach out about, maybe substantially further down the line when we're maybe focusing on other things.
Okay, so maybe kind of for each of those sections.
Yeah.
Get feedback at
Yeah,
that
like
section.
here's the progress we've made, like specifically us, because I think a lot of people are, well aware of the history of all the plans and everything, but here's the progress we've specifically made, and here's what we really could use some, or would love some input on.
Okay. Good idea. Other comments?
So Bruce, are we gonna generate like a draft talking points document that we can all kind of look at in advance?
Right, one of the things I wanted to do is kind of get the generic thing out tonight. Any comments? I'll work on something over the next 2 weeks, so when we get back together in 2 weeks, we'll have something more specific, talking points, good idea. And then that we can just make sure that we've hit all the points we want to hit, and then take it from there.
Okay, and maybe you could send it out. We could do it by email too, right?
Sure, sure.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you.
All right,
And just remind me, do we have at this point, I assume we at least have like mailing addresses for every property owner? Is that
right, that's what,
right? And then presumably mailing addresses for, I mean, obviously, if you send it to the location, it'll get to the business there, even if they're not the property owner, sort of thing.
yeah, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, we did a mailing, snail mail mailing in the fall.
Right.
And we did not get a lot of returns on that, so we do seem to have a pretty good snail mail mailing list.
Okay.
I know that when Camoin was working, we did give them an email list for those people or organizations for which we did have emails.
Okay.
So, and we still have that, so those are really the two pieces that I know we have.
Okay.
There are definitely a couple cases where, I was looking for maybe an owner address and.
But like the assessor's office should have every single owner and owner address available.
Yeah, I mean, I could ask them for the mailing stuff.
Yeah, like usually they can just give you a printout if you give them a list of addresses.
Yeah. I mean, that's originally where we got the mailing stuff from,
Okay,
but the emails are a different
Yeah.
story. We've kind of been keeping those up on our own.
yeah. Oh. I just wanted to make sure we have a way to like reach every owner somehow,
Yes.
even if they.
We're making
Don't
we've got a good
responsive.
effort to do it, yes.
Yeah.
we will give it best effort at
Yes.
at this stage of the game. Okay, anything more on that? What is it? Is that you, Chris?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. I just saw you come on.
How's that? Yeah, no, those of you who are flying, be prepared for the word canceled.
Um,
We just arrived in Pittsburgh. Nice,
okay.
nice drive.
Oh, even worse.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear that. Do you want to make any comments at this point, or just make sure that we knew you were here?
Yeah, no, I just literally got in. I'm sure you did the minutes, but hopefully my comments were okay to the minutes.
Yeah, we reflected your specific comment, did not make the change relative to, the comment by Mr. Dunn, only because we're trying to have the minutes track the agenda, and so we didn't want to throw an extra, item on it, so that was, but
No,
anyway.
no
good.
problem. Yep, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, and so, Doug just gave the, soils, and soils testing and wetlands subcommittee report, and that we're waiting to hear back from Jacobson. Just finished up some property owner about the meeting that is now going to be the 23rd of April rather than what we talked about the 9th last time. And moving on to streetscape. Okay, is everybody ready for that? The good news on streetscape is there's actually been quite a bit of activity, and so let me see how much I can screen sharing will ultimately work. So we had a meeting on Tuesday with the well, let me back up. Casey and I have been working with Jacobson and getting as final a scope of services as possible for phase one, which would be a preliminary design of our streetscape. That work has been that scope is, I would say, 95% done. We have a hopefully last phone call with them tomorrow to finalize it. They have given us a cost proposal, which I've put in front of the first selectman to make sure that it's okay for that to be paid. And one of the first items on their scope of services was that they wanted to have a meeting with the public safety, public works, and land use to make sure that what we were talking about didn't particularly raise any red flags with them. And so we just jumped ahead, got that meeting scheduled. It was scheduled on Tuesday. Jennifer was there as well. And it was a very good meeting. And I would say that there were no red flags raised, and there were a number of positive comments associated with what we were talking about. Let me see, does mine? Yeah. So let me just kind of go from west to east on some of these comments. So one of the things that we had suggested we wanted to see as part of the preliminary design was something that was kind of marking gateway into Mariner's Way, make it feel that the way you've arrived at a place. And I know what I was thinking about was some kind of traffic island that was kind of right there at 154 and 1, right in this location. It seemed pretty wide. As it turns out, even though it is wide relative to the right of way, the state's right of way there, it actually, if you drive there, it falls off pretty quickly on both sides. And so it's, if we wanted to make it wider, we'd have to add some things, which of course we can't do in the wetlands. But the recommendation came up that instead of doing something directly at the intersection, that maybe what we do is pull that back, that island back, maybe to about 30 yards or so. That would give then, if there were big trucks that were pulling in, that would give them room to get around and get down and still be able to have the kind of, welcome way that we want to have. And so, great idea. Everybody seemed to like that. So the folks at Jacobson are gonna take a look at how to do that. We are, a lot of everything that's gonna happen relative to this is dependent on what happens with the traffic counts and making sure that the traffic counts are, and the truck traffic will be part of that. So making sure we're accommodating all of that. Another good discussion that came up was the issue where I can never remember the name of this road that comes in off of it's the highway exit that comes around and then comes in next to Broder's insurance company there and Fine Federal right here. And we talked about, because that's such a crazy intersection at this point anyway, what about putting a traffic circle there? And it was very interesting to me. There seemed to be some pretty positive feelings about that, not the least of which was from the police chief, who actually liked the idea of a traffic circle as a traffic calming measure. Be able to, because he said it's a very straight way. And so if they see that there's a circle there and people are slowing down to get on the circle, that's gonna kind of naturally calm the traffic. And it would take out that weird Y intersection versus trying to make it a T intersection. So, and there's a lot of space there actually, from a right-of-way standpoint. So we're gonna take a look at that as well. And then one of the things that Casey and I had asked them to put into the preliminary design was a sidewalk on the north side of where the streetscape itself is going to be or the pedestrian bikeway is going to be on the south side, but a sidewalk on the north side. And one of the thoughts that came out of that was maybe we design it, it's in play, but it's not necessarily built right away, and that as developers come in or any new development takes place on the north side, then part of what the town could be looking for through zoning would be for that that developer to also put in their length of sidewalk for their property. Apparently, this is something that was done along Route 1, and there were gaps, but over time those gaps get filled in. So that was a good idea, and also may ultimately save some money on the ultimate implementation of this. The idea of the bike path and pedestrian way separated, in this example, separated was something that people liked. It appeared that it was going to, as long as it fits. Chief mentioned that this was best practice at this point, and so he was very much in favor of having some separation between the moving traffic and the walkers and bikers. So there was a series of, some issues that got raised about that, and should we be combining walkers and bikers on the same pathway? But right now, that path is a 12-foot path. It may have to get limited to a 10-foot path because of some idea of maybe putting a little bit more of a shoulder along the way. So anyway, but I think at the end of the day, there was pretty strong positive feeling that was the way to go, that we ought to do it. And then the idea of once you get to the bend at Ferry Road, being able to then put in still a small little separation here. And this, I think, is either a 5 or a 6 foot path. We'd have to narrow because we don't have as much right of way to be able to make that happen. So these are all designs that came out of Freeman in the 2017 report. So, but it's what kind of the basis from which our friends at Jacobson are going to work.
Question,
Yep.
can you just, go back to the part about sidewalks and, letting developers as properties turn over do the sidewalk part? So I'm confused between that issue and then this separate pedestrian way, so.
North side versus south side. So on the south side, the town would be putting this in. Oh, there may be some grant money or something associated with that, but that is something that we would be putting in from 154 intersection all the way down to the Ferry Road turn.
Okay, and I'm south side, right?
Your south side,
Yeah, okay,
okay, and then the north side.
that would be as the developers.
Right, and very similar to what's happened with Fine Fettle, Fine Fettle has a very nice sidewalk. Start somewhere and end somewhere, but as any additional development on the north side takes place, then the idea would be that they would, that developer would put that in.
Okay, so two totally separate,
Right,
okay, thank you.
but the sidewalk will be designed in this preliminary design to make sure that everything we're talking about fits. And it also has an impact on utilities and utility poles because to a large extent, the utilities are on the utility poles are on the north side. So we need to keep that in mind as well.
So I think I wasn't at that meeting, but I think we would be constructing the one side because there's an understanding that it's important for us to have it at least on one side. That's the side that has a more substantial construction involved, so there's a more substantial cost. But for the people on the north side, I think it's still, or as new developments come in and they're required, they would only be required to do it as part of a new development proposal. And the fact that we would have already designed it makes it so that it's not like a really, it's fair, I think. It's not like too onerous.
Right.
For us, for the town or for the developer. But then we still have something that gets put in place right away, so people can actually like use it and.
Yeah,
walk
that-
down the road. Yeah.
That's just what I wanted to clarify, because safety, of course, is my number one.
Yeah.
Okay, let me also then kind of go back up to big picture. One of the things that, I showed them the proposed curb cuts that came out of the 2017 study or where their curb cuts needed to be discussed because there seems to be a lot on the north side. So we are going to look at that and but it became very clear that when we put in new sidewalks along Route 1, there were some questions raised by the businesses there about the narrowness of the curb cuts. So we are also going to make sure that the curb cuts are wider than what we had done previously. So that we'll take a look at that. And then one of the things we talked about at last meeting when we were talking about kind of uses, Doug had mentioned, and I think to some degree it's really kind of more on the south side than on the north side, but that there would be potentially, parking either in the back, or a development in the development in the front, parking in the back, or the other way around. And that and if that were the case, that there was a couple of centralized parking areas, we would really only need a couple of curb cuts on the south side to be able to accommodate that happening. And that because that's where the more significant bike and pathway or bike and walkway is going, we want to avoid as many curb cuts as possible. There's not many there now, to be honest with you, which is great. So I don't think that's gonna be an issue, but we just wanted to bring it to your attention. And then lastly, one of the things that came up actually today, and I did have the chance to have a meeting with, the primary person who's going to be doing the, development at, let me just see whether I can move this. He's gonna be doing the development down here, which is the, north yard of, Ferry Point. And, number one, very excited about working in tandem with us, that their development and our development really ought to be working together. When we met with the town officials on Tuesday, one of the things that we learned was that, what the folks at Ferry Road, or Ferry Landing are thinking of doing is on, I guess we would call that now the east side, the lower side. This is the side that is going to be developed. And what they would like to do is they would like to put in, angled parking from the road. So that, when we began to talk about having some kind of bike path that came down, on this side, we would then run into that angled parking. And even though they're putting in a 6-foot sidewalk, as part of their development, I'm not sure we would want to have bicycles, and folks, kind of folks that are going through be on that sidewalk running into people who are getting out of their cars. And we definitely don't want to have them coming in behind cars that are angled parked, so there's no way they're going to see them coming out. So one of the things that we want to take a look at is there a place up here where we might be able to actually go from the south side as we make the transition to that narrower, pedestrian bike path, turn that onto the north side and, bring that down along that side. And we would pick up the ball field that's there. We pick up the, development that, the housing development that's in there. But also apparently there's, an application either in front of zoning or coming in front of zoning for 12 units, right here that was on this piece of property. So, the idea of getting some kind of sidewalk that would go along there makes a lot of sense. And when I talked to the fellow who was, kind of keying the development at Ferry Landing, he thought it was great to try to make the connection and said they'd be working with us and whatever we needed, to be able to make that happen. So beginning of the conversation, I don't have any clarity exactly as to how that's going to work. But anyway, that's that. And then one thing, Doug, you'd be interested in this, that he mentioned was, and this is, off of the 2017 study that, Freeman and Civic Moxie did. But if you can see, they had designed in a potential, pedestrian path right here behind Glade View going out to Ferry Road there. And, he was wondering whether or not we would want to have something, along those lines as well, because, it just, it's marshy area. I don't know if there's any area in there that's not wetlands that we would actually be able to put a path in, but it would be going right next to the Ragged Rock Arena. The folks who are now own the North Yard now also own Ragged Rock Arena. So he said they would be willing to work with us if we wanted to have boardwalk on their property. So anyway, lots of different possibilities to be thinking about.
Yeah, I did see that, Bruce, and I did see that in the report. It does intersect a lot, all that property. So I guess it depends on how the lots end up, being carved out or utilized. Where like what we had talked about along the train track, it's kind of like tucked along the edge of all the properties, but it's certainly an option.
Right. So it's the kind of thing that just kind of bear in mind rather than necessarily, but I thought it was intriguing and the fact that they own Ragged Rock and willing to kind of put that out there as being, let's, you know, if you need to work with us in making that happen, we can do that. So that's good. Okay, other questions that people may have around streetscape at this point? Anything that I missed, Jennifer, from the meeting?
No, I think we got the high points then.
Okay. Okay. We will then continue to move on. So the next, oh, just so you know, the plan right now is hopefully Casey and I finalize things tomorrow. Jacobson submits a formal proposal next week to us. First selectman signs off on it and we go to town. So that's the, I would hope that by the time we get together on the 9th, we are in play at that point. So I will stop the share. And which way do I want to go? Let me, I'm gonna bring. Oop. So last time when we met, we all put our votes in on what is, you know, what we wanted to see in the way of uses. And we had what I did was took everybody's vote and then this first column, I then arranged it by, you know, the most number of votes down to the least number of votes. And then took a look at the current zoning for the 4 different zones that are in Mariners Way, industrial, marine industrial, the B3 and the B4 zone. And look to see whether the uses that we were saying we most wanted to see were allowed within those zones. So that's what you're seeing in front of you right now. And you can, for instance, all 6 of us said we wanted to see park, some kind of green space. And that is a permitted use in any of those zones, not a problem. However, marine supply store is currently not a permitted use in the industrial zone B3 or B4. So if we wanted to, let me, okay. I'm not gonna pull up the zoning map to show you exactly what's where, but I think as we begin to think through what we want, this kind of grid gives us the information that we need about what we need to include in a zoning amendment. And as we talked about last time, not knowing exactly what that looks like, whether it's standalone, whether it's an overlay, any of those things we'll have to figure out. But so there are a number of things, as you can see, that we suggested mixed use development where it's not allowed, not spoken about in any of the zones and not allowed in the industrial zone. So there's a number of those types of things that we need to just create a zoning amendment that would allow for. Where that leads me to think, and I wish I could share all my screens at the same time, but I don't have the technological capacity to do that. But as we walked out of the last meeting, Doug mentioned that 2 things, that there was a Saybrook Point zone as it turns out, there's a Saybrook Point zone that actually has 3 distinct districts within the zone, which is the second thing that Doug had mentioned, which was the fact that we didn't have to necessarily think of the whole of Mariners Way as being one, one entity. We could have different activities zoned in different areas. And as it turns out, that's exactly what's happened with the Saybrook Point. So that the Saybrook Point, the first district is, I believe, wait a minute, we'll be back.
We don't have the zones up on the big map yet.
No, we
right?
don't. We will, we just don't have everything. So this is Saybrook Point 1. So this is the area that is a little bit off of the water. It's kind of where the discussion is right now relative to where the dock and dine is and those kinds of things. This is Saybrook Point 2, and then and that includes all the way down through the Saybrook Point Inn and the attached marina. And then Saybrook Point 3 is the residences on the other side of the road from Saybrook Point Inn. So just to give you a sense of how that works. So then we'll go back to what I was showing you. So anyway, I know this may seem confusing to you, but so then what they've done is they've taken all the permitted uses that they wanted to see, or all the uses that they wanted to see in the Saybrook Point districts, and determine what could be in which of the 3, or the Saybrook Point zone, and then what could be in each of the districts. So they then go through and they run through it, a number of things, docks, wharfs, parks, playgrounds, all of that. But if you think about what I just showed you relative to the grid that we put together, and think about, okay, what are the top, 25 choices? If those are the kinds of things that we want to do, we could do a bit of a plug and play with that language relative to a Mariners Way district. And then we could think about, do we want to have, going back to Doug's point, do we want to have that throughout Mariners Way, or do we want to have a focus of X, Y, and Z more toward 154 and something else more focused down toward Gladeview? I'm not suggesting we do or we don't. All I'm delighted about is that we're not necessarily carving new territory in Old Saybrook's zoning regs, which to me is always a good thing. We can point to a model that's already in place and say, okay, based on what has already been done, Saybrook Point, we're following that relative to what we're suggesting here. So let me stop there and just see what comments or questions or thoughts that people may have. All right, group tonight. Have I completely confused you with my switching screens? What happens then after it's determined what they want there, then you go through a differentiation about size of buildings, size of lots, and into a lot of the design pieces that we also want to be able to talk about. So anyway, I thought it was a good model. I'll look to my zoning alternate whether or not, do you think this is a good model? Just the kind of thing we want to take a look at?
I'm sort of, well, to me, for the conversations that we've had and kind of what I think people have expressed, the lot and bulk and design standards are probably more important than differentiate, like if we're gonna have subzones, I think those components are more important within the subzones than the uses, because I think what we do with that will also sort of cause some self-selection with the types of uses that end up in each area. And if whatever use Y is willing to build within the constructs, like the confines of those like lot and bulk restrictions or requirements and design requirements, then I sort of circle back to that conversation about like, it's probably okay, because
Right.
we're not talking about like heavy industrial smokestacks or something like that. So it doesn't really, you know, we're like major, I mean, there's some things that could be hashed out, but to me, that's kind of where my preference goes.
So you'd focus more on this area rather than the use area.
Yeah, I mean, I think uses are important, but I think it's important to remember that we're trying to create opportunity there, and we're trying to create opportunity for an interested developer, interested property owners to do something there. And we're with zoning, making sure that it's an appropriate development. But the zoning isn't necessarily, like, the intention of the zoning is not to say like, here are the 3 things we're gonna let you build there.
Mhm.
It's really to make sure that like the uses and the development are appropriate. So to me, like, I think people can get really, really bogged down in details and almost overly bogged down with like minutia in zoning sometimes. And I love zoning and I love zoning minutia, but having written, like, I've written zoning regulations that had subzones, and I think, like, I think that could be appropriate here. I just don't want us to get too bogged down in like, I just think it's important to remember that we're trying to facilitate something here and not dictate it, if that makes sense.
No, I think that makes sense.
But yeah, I think subzones can work really well. If they're gonna be totally different, then maybe we don't need to make them as subzones. You know, you and I think have had a little bit of a conversation about like, are there existing zones that apply? Obviously, the downside of that is then anything we do affects that zone in every other part, wherever it exists in
Right.
every other part of town. But I think, to me, it's useful if we have like one kind of picture for the zone, but there are nuances, that's where subzones apply. Which I think is probably the case here, so I think it's a good idea. I also just would caution about, like, we don't wanna be spot zoning.
No. We don't want to go to jail.
Zoning jail, that's right.
Been able to stay out of jail all my life. I don't want to do it for zoning. Other comments, other thoughts? Folks online?
Yeah, I like the Saybrook Point model myself. You know, I think it would work good. It gets away from the generic implications of anything we want to change affecting other similar zones in town if we're just focused on Mariner's Way, like we talked about last time.
Mhm. Okay. Then we will, I gave folks a homework assignment in that, just thinking about what, kind of taking a step back and thinking through what is it that, we wanted to see. You know, Chris had kind of raised do we want to get locked into that what we know versus what we, kind of not something that's been done before, not something that's even currently contemplated in the zoning regs that we would be, picking and choosing from. So I don't know whether you've had a chance to spend a little time thinking about that, or whether it's a good use of time to just put any of those ideas out there at this point. Did we lose Chris?
Oh, he was there a minute ago.
Yeah, you may have. May have gotten to a destination. Okay. Well, one of the things, let me go back one step, and go back to the conversation I had earlier today with the, person from Ferry Landing. And what I mentioned to him, is that what they want to put in retail, restaurant, that kind of thing. At Ferry Landing, they're not going to put in housing, at least at this stage of the game. And they are, so I said, just thinking about the space that you have, if you're gonna have, more than one or two retail shops and some restaurants, they're not gonna be very large. And so, I wanted to make sure that anything that we were doing up along Mariners Way was not gonna be in conflict with them, similarly to how we don't wanna be in conflict with Main Street, how we don't wanna be in conflict with Spencer Plains Road. And I said, and the flip side of that is, how could we possibly be thinking about putting things in Mariners Way, which would be helpful? For instance, if you need a sale repair place, and you don't have enough space where you are, then maybe some kind of, light industrial, maybe even sale manufacturing and repair place along Mariners Way would make sense in order to be able to do it. And any other marine related activities that could get connected, because one of the things I didn't realize until today's conversation, but apparently, that, they have just taken over Ragged Rock and the North Yard. The just north of the 95 bridge is another new group that's taken over that. So there's actually going to be quite a bit of I'd say more activity around, more marine activity that gets put together over the next year to 2 years based on the new ownership of all of these marinas. And so thinking about what we could be doing at Mariners Way that is capturing that was interesting to me. And also a good feed about the connection between what's happening at the river and what we're doing, so that we're not competing, we're actually supporting. So that was at least part of the thought. So that's one. The other thing I brought up last time, a little bit generically, but I'll bring it up a little more specifically at this point, and that is the concept of what I would refer to as a micro innovation district. And for people who don't know the terminology of an innovation district, these are places around the world that academia, industry, and entrepreneurs come together and create these areas. Cambridge area in Boston, there's a specific area in the Kendall Square area that is, one of the first innovation districts, but they literally have them around the world at this point, and they've been viewed as being a very positive job generation, and actually innovating new products. But when you look at what's happening with electric boat, where they're now probably going to be, have contracts through 2050, hiring 8,000 people this year, another 8,000 people next year. I don't know whether you saw but the Lee Company right here in, Essex has just opened an innovation center in Westbrook, into which they've invested $20 million for, being able to enhance the products that the Lee Company is building. So I think there is going back to something that Casey was talking about in the way of light industrial versus, something that is, so it would be R&D, be light industrial, would be, there, I know the University of Connecticut is looking to boost its marine sciences, marine engineering activity at Avery Point. There might be links that we could do with University of Connecticut as an academic institution. So anyway, in the world of dreaming big and how does, something that would really put this area on the map, and to use to use the buzzword terminology of the day, the Blue Tech Micro Innovation District would be the kind of thing that, and these are mixed use, these have housing, retail, and research and development, all, all together is the way in which these things are organized. So, I can send you some information about, micro innovation districts if anybody is interested, but from dreaming big and thinking about what could happen, that's certainly one of the things that I think we have connections that could help make that happen. We also talked about the idea of indoor recreation, and I'm interested about indoor recreation from the perspective of space and, part of me, I think Emily, you said it at the last meeting that, this is kind of, if there's a recreation / wellness kind of vibe as part of this, that maybe that's the angle to go with and being able to move some of this forward. Any of the indoor recreation places that I've seen have taken up a lot of space. The kids played indoor soccer and, up in the greater Hartford area. And so some of those Farmington and Glastonbury facilities are pretty big, but I don't know. I don't know how people are, how people feel about that at this point.
I know I had indoor recreation as one of the things that I kind of like married to another existing zone, some of the other existing zoning uses. I was trying to bring up my list here. So I think it's something that is interesting to me. Yeah, I don't know about the amount of land that it requires and whether or not, but there are things that are always changing, and I think it's an interesting use to me. I think it's something that I'd like to see us, and I don't think it's in conflict with, on first blush, it might sort of sound like it is, but I don't think it's at all in conflict with like R&D type uses or, some of those like, technology related type uses or things like that. The structure of the buildings sort of actually tends to be consistent in a lot of ways, a lot of times, and I think it could all make a lot of sense. Sort of like in modernizing the whole area. So I like it. I'm interested in it as an added use.
One advantage to it in my mind would be, if it were kind of the right thing, as I mentioned, one of the things I'm looking for is how do we import wealth into Old Saybrook? How do we bring visitors in? How do we bring sales, whatever the case may be? and one advantage in my mind is that kind of facility, if, you know, if you think about the indoor soccer facilities that I've seen, constantly busy, constantly bringing people in from out of town, and probably have a fairly small septic use,
Mhm.
which might be advantageous for what, you know, we're looking at. Or maybe, Doug, as we get the analysis about where this, you know, good areas and the okay areas, but not no, you know, maybe we look at the okay areas around, you know, for that, rather than necessarily the good areas that we might want to use for housing or something along those lines. So it's the kind of, less volume on the septic side that might be very helpful too.
Hey, Bruce.
Yeah.
Is, does that facility I think it's in Waterford at 395 and Route 85, right at the exit there?
Yeah.
There's a, indoor soccer. I don't know if they flood it for skating, but it might be something for us to look at. You know, there's probably a lot of information available on it, and I'd be willing to take a ride over there and look at it if
Yeah,
you want to
sure.
ride up there.
Yeah, 395.
You know, I think it gets down to scalability too, is all right, you know, what's our footprint and what's the scale? I know the one in Waterford's a pretty busy place. There's always traffic going in and out of there, but I haven't been there in years.
Yeah, okay.
But I would like to see something along those lines. I think it's a great idea.
Well, we can take a ride up there. We can look at some other examples. I know that they were just talking about putting a facility in on the kind of North Stonington line. They were just talking about doing that. So that's a very recent development, and we might be able to get some information from them on that as well.
I wonder if you would want to talk to, this place that actually exists in Old Saybrook. It's called Lumber to Leather, Spencer Plains Road. It's a baseball training facility,
Never heard of it.
8,000 square feet.
We're in Spencer's Plains.
It's 121. I forget, he's been in business probably a couple of years now, and it might be interesting to hear his experience and how it's been going and find out the kind of numbers he has and.
And whether, you know, his expansion in his picture. Okay, good idea.
And there are some like, I'm sort of just thinking a lot, but like, there are some that are maybe not indoor. I mean, I love the idea of like an indoor sports facility, but that are also, right, like a little bit, you know, and we have some things that are sort of along those lines, like there's the gymnastics place that is right on,
Right.
there now, Mariners Way now, but, where there is a combination of sort of like kids, there are like the trampoline parks that have, and some of them, you know, I'm not saying that that's necessarily what would be our ideal, but there are some that have a little more zest to them, I'll say, that have like other kind of hip recreational activities like axe throwing or, you know, whatever the other, you know, those types of things, that maybe could be interesting to at least learn a little bit more about.
We should go axe throwing as a group.
I mean, the one in Waterford, for better for worse, 'cause I've been there when my children were young.
Yeah.
It actually has like a bar upstairs. like,
Yeah.
So while you're watching your kids play,
Yeah.
you can
Yeah,
have a drink
Yeah.
or watch sports. Which
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. But.
Yeah.
You can rent it out for stuff. and-
yeah, and they seem to
Yeah.
be busy when I've gone.
Okay. Yeah, well, one of the things I remember, I think we did a survey with Des Moines about what residents in Old Saybrook would like to see in Mariners Way, if I remember correctly. I think it was the Des Moines study, not one of their earlier ones. But one of the things that did come out of that was there was a lot of interest in, there's no place for that, kind of older grade school through, through high school, being able to drive. There's, kind of nothing for them to do. And being able to have some kind of facility where people could go, not axe throwing, but something along those lines. So anyway, that's a good idea. All right. Other thoughts people may have?
I just
So
wanted to,
Bruce,
Yep.
go ahead.
no, go ahead.
You're up.
No, I was just gonna throw out, and this is in our zoning regs, but I don't think it was reflected. That wouldn't necessarily be on the list that we had, but I think we're all thinking about mixed use ideas, meaning a residential component combined. So, sorry, I'm choking. A residential component combined with a commercial component. But some of the zoning regs sort of explicitly kind of call that out or talk about what that looks like in different types of mixed use zones and that sort of thing. So I don't know if that's something we would want to specifically call out as a use, but it might be something we want to think about, at least in some of, if we do subzones, like some of the subzones where we're like, we don't want just a residential development. Like
Oh, I
we
see.
want the option of a residential component, but we don't want just a residential development, if that's the case.
And is there, so it's residential and not necessarily residential and retail only, because there would be commercial space, like you say,
Right.
whether it's doctor's offices or barber shops or whatever.
Right, and we could decide what that would or wouldn't be.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I think mixed use that has retail only can be challenging for developers, so I think we would wanna have, and I don't think that's what we're exactly looking to do here.
Right. Okay, good point. Doug?
Yeah, so just it may be semantics. You talked about an incubation center. It could be called a marine technology incubator, kind of along the same lines. It could also have a maritime training center for certifications or captain licensing. Um, just kind of going down my list, I kind of played off your email. As far as a regional destination, and I know we don't have all kinds of space, but if there was a inn with a conference center, you could almost have a water view behind Glade View there. I don't know how much room there is, but it's just an idea. A food hall or shared space market. Regional rowing or sailing club. Indoor outdoor maker spaces. This is where you have like metal workers, furniture makers, they're making and selling things, but the public can kind of walk through and see these artists, doing their thing. So it's kind of dual purpose. We've talked about Glade View, could that be expanded? There's the concept of a campus-like continuing care facility, where seniors move into, one level of housing, and then as they get older, they go from like the condo to the apartment to the nursing home. I don't know what's over there now, but they have a lot of room there, I believe, to expand. And then the last one, and again, I'm just shotgunning things like you asked for, maybe a Marine Science Discovery Center. It's been a few years since I've been in the DEP on the other side of the river. I think they have a little bit of I think they have something over there, but it's a possibility, and it pulls a lot of kids in. Um, the area was recently designated as and I'm forgetting the full term here, this is from like the Connecticut River to, I believe it's like Stonington, a national estuarine area. It was a big designation. It was maybe like 4 years ago. That was recognized at the national level. It's administered by Yukon in our area, and they must have local offices here or there, but maybe if they're looking for space, they might be a good tenant. It's certainly related, and I can dig up more information on that, but I'm sure you could Google it as well. Anyways, that's what I came up with.
Good list, thanks. Now, was that you or AI? That's all I'm asking.
Yes.
Okay. Good enough. Any other thoughts before we break up?
I was just to build off of some of the things Doug said that just got me thinking. I think we even could add, I mean, I don't know what everybody else thinks, but maybe we don't even need to limit it to like just marine sciences. Like we could have other types of like, I just, sometimes there's like I worked in a town that had a really niche like aviation technology company, and it was like what they did was really interesting and something I would never think of specifically, but like would be a great fit. So I think the marine, it obviously screams for the marine because of the area, but I think we could even like build off of that.
So.
And that would, I guess, fall under R&D maybe.
Yeah, it'd be kind of cool to have it be in a situation where we do R&D and then be able to display the kinds of products that are coming out of
Yeah.
something like this. Okay. I think we've bent our brains for tonight. If there are any comments from committee members, any additional comments people would like to make before we break up? As far as I know, we do not have any other guests, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Is there a second? A second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all very much. Hope you have a great night.
Yeah.